Hey, we are live and only running a minute late, so we are glad to have everybody watching the stream. I am Justin, also known as the DIY Audio Guy, and with me is my
Hey, Peter.
partner in crime, Nick from Toys DIY Audio. And a couple of months ago, I showed my cat on the stream, and Nick said, I'm going to one-up you. I have something better than a cat. I have thick, luxurious hair.
This is Peter Rabbit, man. We call him Peter Parker Rabbit. Yep, Peter Parker Rabbit.
That's not your thick, luxurious hair? I've been thinking about getting a rabbit, so I'm trying to let you have hair.
You know what's cool about rabbits, which a lot of people don't realize? Rabbits can be potty trained, and he is potty trained just like a cat.
Cool.
He uses the litter box, uses everything. We got an automatic feeder and water for Peter. He's pretty cool. He's living the life of luxury, aren't you, Peter? So I'm here for the rabbit and nothing else. I'm going to put him out because the last time I left him inside my office with me hanging out, all of a sudden my keyboard stopped working. And I was like, what the heck is that? And he chewed through the keyboard cable.
Fantastic. Fantastic. So while he's getting ready, he has wireless headphones, so he can hear us still. So we can't say bad things about him when he's off camera. Right off the bat, George M had a question. Why is there a need for a two-layer baffle on a subwoofer? Would proper bracing eliminate the need for two layers? There are a lot of reasons to use a two-layer baffle and a lot of reasons not to. And Nick and I chatted about this briefly before the stream shouted. I know Nick has some ideas. Nick, what are some reasons to use a double-layer baffle and reasons not to?
Well, first of all, I rarely use a two-layer baffle for resonances, although that is definitely a way to mitigate resonances. And that's what he's talking about. You know, do you use a two-layer baffle for resonances? And sometimes that's definitely a reason to use that. But for the majority of the time, when I do a dual layer, the reason why I do it is for one reason only, and that's to mount the subwoofer safely. So that's usually because I'm recessing it and the subwoofer is very, very heavy. And so because of that, I'm using like T-nuts or something of that nature. And I recess it. Some of these bigger subwoofers, like the 18s, 21 inches, they go down almost 3/4 of an inch. So by the time, you put that second baffle on, you only have 1 inch to 3/4 of an inch that you're actually only clamping down onto. So you got to keep that in mind as well.
So you're doubling up on the baffle and recessing it to make sure that you have plenty of room for your screws to bite into the wood.
Yeah. And I don't use the screws. I use T-nuts and bolts.
Yeah, for a big driver, T-nuts are the way to go. For smaller ones, I think T-nuts are overkill for smaller drivers.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, it is nice though. If you do take your driver out a lot, then T-nuts are a lot nicer than just regular screws.
So real quick, before we forget, thank David K for the super chat. David K is both a patron of your channel and my channel, and you can always sign up for Patreon anytime you want if you want to support our channels. And I recently turned on channel membership. And so if anyone wants to spend $2 to be a member of the YouTube channel, and if you're a channel member, you get like special like my little icon logo that I use. Let's see if I have an example of it here.
I need to do that as well.
This icon here, right? This one. So that'll be by your name when you comment on things, and you can do some emojis. And I made some emojis and icons related to my line of merchandise promoting quality amplifiers, maxpoweraudio.com. But back to the actual question, I like to have a double baffle and then recess the woofer because I think it looks better. I like the look. I don't know why, I just do. So there's aesthetic reasons to do it. And you're exactly right. The sound quality reason for doubling up on the baffle is reducing resonances in that baffle. And you don't have to do that if you have the brace box braced well.
Brace properly. Yeah. And there's a couple different ways to do this. If you are going to do a two-layer baffle for resonances, then that's when most people are going to do a constrained layer dampening, right? So you can definitely do a constrained layer dampening, which actually does also do that. And that's where you're running two pieces of material and then something in between, something like green glue. A lot of people will use something like green glue. You can also use things like Dynomat or something like that in between the two pieces of wood. And then that is considered a constrained layer dampening. And you can do that. And that's also done when people build soundproofing rooms, right? When they want to try to keep the sound away from other areas of the house. So you have those options. Quadruple baffle or bust. Now the one downside of adding a double baffle or quadruple baffle or anything else that you want to add is weight.
Yes. That is the thing you should be worried about when adding multiple baffles. Weight is good because weight dampens the enclosure. Weight is bad because you throw your back out or mess up your knees picking things up or whatever the case may be.
I tried to tell my wife that weight is good and she did not agree with me.
I'm not going to take that out of context at all.
Adrian Bauer, thank you for the super chat, man. We really do appreciate it, and we appreciate the little bit of laugh there. That is definitely well needed on this show.
AJC box. Go ahead.
I was going to say AJC also said he does wood inserts. Are you familiar with those? Yeah, where you drill the hole and you just kind of screw them in.
Yeah, I found them very frustrating to work with. They were easy to bust them out of the wood. I've heard a good tip. I forget where I heard this from. It may have been the guy you built the downfiring 10-inch build with.
Tom Zarbo.
Yeah, Zarbo. He used a CA glue, crazy glue, super glue. And he would drill the hole and then put some super glue in to get the fibers to hold together, as opposed to just gluing it in. I guess you could do both. I don't like working with them, but they work.
I don't mind wood inserts, but in my opinion, I like T-nuts better. That's my personal opinion. Oh, that's a good question. We'll have to get to that one later.
You want to start that one? You can start it too.
Yeah, don't forget to and guys, thank you for that. And by the way, I have an open invitation to David. He knows what I'm talking about. I'm not going to say it out loud, but I want to say it on air so that he knows how serious I am. That invitation is open. So
okay,
that's a little behind the scenes. That's what you get when you get patrons and friends and all that going on, right?
Yep.
Sometimes you get some of that behind the scenes stuff.
Did you bring any questions from before the stream from your viewers or patrons?
Yeah, someone had asked me about one of my builds. They'd asked me about the Cinema 6, and they asked if they would be good LCR speakers. And LCR stands for left, center, and right speaker. Would it be good for those? And the answer is yes. I mean, that's originally what those were designed for. The Cinema 6 were designed for that. Now, having said that, I want to be very clear with the Cinema 6. The Cinema 6 are very narrow band speakers. What that means is it's a very narrow area that you're getting sound out of. And they were designed after speakers that also had a fairly narrow band, which was these clip speakers, the THX. So keep that in mind. If you're a wide dispersion person, then I wouldn't build the Cinema 6. I'd go for something like the Cinema 10, which are fantastic front speakers.
Just to clarify, you mean these speakers tend to beam, and when you get off axis, the sound quality degrades. Is that what you mean?
Yeah. So in home theater, that can be good. So some people like narrow speakers because you can easily pinpoint where the sound is coming from, right? Because you can say, oh, that's coming from the left, that's coming from the right, that's coming from the center. And so some people really appreciate that. But other people like to be just enveloped in sound. You can still point it out, like left, right, and center, but you're more enveloped with the sound. I like being more enveloped. So for me, the Cinema 10 is better than the Cinema 6. They're about the same price to build. So that's the reason why I do that. The BTS 15s are actually a little bit more like they're better than the Cinema 6. You get a little bit better wide off axis, but they're not as much as the Cinema 10. Cinema 10 have the best off. Cinema 10 and the Soundstage 15 have the best off axis.
All right. I want to grab this question down in the chat. Can you suggest good sound quality subwoofers?
Yes,
absolutely.
Answer. Yep. All right. Good. Next question.
I'm going to drop a link in the video description right now to a sound quality subwoofer. Y'all can click on that and check it out. I've not tried these, but I've heard amazing things about them, and I would love to try them. It's the Audio Frog GB10D2. So 10D2 is a 10-inch dual 2-ohm voice coil. Let's see if I can add it to the screen real quick.
Now, while we're
And
talking about this, it doesn't necessarily matter, but when you ask a question like that, it's good to say whether you're talking about car audio or home audio. We're making the assumption that you're talking about car audio because most people, when they say sound quality, they're talking about, for sound quality build. Right?
yeah, right. Now, this is not a cheap subwoofer by any stretch of the imagination, but I would put it up against a JL Audio that costs twice as much and be willing to compare it to something like that. Now, having not heard it, just heard about it. That's the first one that pops into my head. And if you're interested in buying anything from Crutchfield, you can hit that link, and it is affiliate link, and I do get a small commission for that. It's not a lot, but it's a lot if you buy a $650 subwoofer. There are better budget options for sound quality subwoofers. Nick, do you have a better budget option, a lower priced budget subwoofer that you would recommend?
Well, first, I want to go with one of my favorite, which is the CSS Audio. The CSS Audio 12-inch XBL. They use an XBL2 motor. It's an underhung motor. And I think it was actually Vance Dickinson actually reviewed it on his site. And both of us said the exact same thing, which is pretty interesting. That subwoofer is so clean until it's not. And what do we mean by that? It means that all the way up. So the way an underhung motor is designed, it has a T-plate at the bottom of it. And while it's in the magnetic gap, it's extremely quiet. Now, if you put that up too much and now all of a sudden that T-plate's hitting the top of the magnet, right? That's when all of a sudden it doesn't sound good. That is the cleanest, best sounding subwoofer I have ever heard. They make a 10-inch and a 12-inch. You can buy them right from Parts Express. I think if you follow the link on Justin's channel, he has a 5% off code now too, so you can get a 5% off.
Huge. Just DIY 5.
DIY 5, yep. And you can get another 5% off that. They're also not cheap, but here's the deal. For sound quality, you're not going to get cheap because that motor structure has to be good. And without that good motor structure, you're not going to get great sounding subwoofer. So I would definitely look at the CSS Audio 12-inch. It's about $425 for a 12-inch, and they also have a 10-inch, and I'm not sure what the 10-inch is. But I will say this: out of every subwoofer I've heard, that's the cleanest sounding subwoofer I've heard, bar none.
So here's one that's more.
Oh yeah, Adair Audio also uses underhung. I have not used. It's Adair or Dyer. I haven't used that one yet.
Here's a more budget-friendly sound quality subwoofer. I'm currently running 2 of these, and I just dropped a link to a video that my question is, which bald guy? There's a reason Nick wears a hat.
Yeah, we're both out of there, dude. I just don't want to blind you.
See, that's why I called his rabbit earlier a thick, luxurious hair. I was messing with him. I can speculate who Amish drive-by might actually be, but he's one of our many tricksters and people up to all kinds of chicanery that hang out in our chat. And I think he just
means get rid of both of us and pick up Big Jeff.
I promise you there are, oh my goodness. Okay. Here's a more budget-friendly version. I'm currently running 2 of these. I absolutely love it. I dropped a link to the YouTube video where I built it. It was a 2-part video because it was a pretty long build. So this is a good budget alternative for an affordable sound quality driver. This one apparently does really well in very small enclosures, and it has like a copper shorting ring. So I don't know what that does, something with the inductance, and it creates this magic that makes it sound good. It's known for a real budget sleeper sound quality subwoofer.
Typically, shortening rings are made out of copper. It's interesting that one doesn't say copper shortening ring. It just says triple shortening ring. Dayton Audio also makes the HF version, which stands for high fidelity. So HO stands for high output. HF stands for high fidelity. Either one of those would work as well.
They also have a high excursion version, and it's on sale right now. They were almost $200. At $200, maybe it's not that great of a deal, but at $150, I kind of like it. And I think that 5% code, either yours or mine, should still get you 5% off on top of that.
Yeah, toyed for mine and
DIY 5 I think is what mine is. Yeah.
Here, let me also share my screen. I want to show you guys the CSS audio, because this is a really great subwoofer, and I wish more people would use this. I actually ended up selling mine to one of my patrons. He really wanted it, and I gave him a heck of a deal on that thing. I mean, I really
is that
did.
the one where you built the radiator box?
Yeah, the passive radiator box. It is
yeah.
unbelievable sound, and they do have kits where you can buy it. But this thing, it also has a big. Well, here you go. 56 millimeters of peak to peak X max. So it creates a lot of bass. And that's the reason why I like it. It's ultra low distortion and it creates a lot of bass. And okay, so here we go. 2 aluminum and 1 copper shortening rings inside the magnet. Now they do make a 10-inch too.
How much is that one?
That one's 420. 420. The 10-inch looks like it's out of stock, but it's $350.
Okay.
So either one is good, but I would tell you, if it was me, from what I've heard so far, that'd be my first choice.
Awesome.
Hey, all AJC is right on. Some use copper with an aluminum. Maybe we need him on the show.
Maybe so.
Yeah. Speaking of that, before we go too far, just so you guys know, next week we are going to have someone from Parts Express on the show with us. So going to be on my channel. The reason why I say that is because if you have any Parts Express questions, it'd be a good time to bring it up. I mean, you can bring them up today too, but I'm just saying.
Along the sound quality subwoofer game, I've heard nothing but good things about Image Dynamic subwoofers.
I haven't heard anything about them, so
I've heard nothing but good things. I've got some Savard subwoofers, and I'm really excited to try them out. I'm told that the Savard Rap series sound fantastic, so hopefully we'll get some videos with some Savard content coming out when I get a chance.
Yeah. AJC is asking a question that's breaking my heart. I want to answer this. I want to answer. He said the OmniMic 40,000 hertz, which by the way is the OmniMic V3. He said, where is it? So for you guys that don't know, there's a new OmniMic coming out. This is a V3. The OmniMic V2 can't buy anymore. They don't sell it. Can't buy it. I have one, but you can't buy it. Here's the deal. The OmniMic V2 measured up to 20 kilohertz. The OmniMic V3 measured up to 40 kilohertz. And some people are going to say, well, I don't ever need to hear 40 kilohertz. And that's true. But you can only measure distortion half of whatever you can measure frequency-wise.
Oh.
So what do you think this does for our distortion measurements? We can now get distortion all the way up to 20 kilohertz, which is great. So we'll be able to measure things a lot better than we were able to before. When is it coming out? It's a good question to ask Dayton Audio next week. Last I heard it was ask next week, but last I heard it was December. And as far as I know, that's still the schedule. But I would say that we need to ask that again next week when he's on there, and hopefully he knows. Oh man. Tech Time with Eric was right. The best budget sound quality subwoofer is Dual. And Boss.
Oh, Planet Audio as well. The one that Planet Audio and the SSL, the Soundstorm Labs. All right, I got a question for you. And this is a question. I don't know how well y'all can see that. I'll read it to you. Maybe I can zoom in a little bit with this terrible quality screen grab that I have here. So this is one of the many questions that I get on my Set the Amp Gain with the Multimeter video. People ask questions on that video a lot, and I love answering questions. So here it is. Why am I not able to get a stable reading when tuning my Memphis 500.1, but when I tune my Kicker 350.4, I get a stable reading? So the question is, I'm using a multimeter to set my amp gains. I'm probing the speaker outputs with the multimeter, and I'm getting a stable reading with 1 amp, meaning I turn the gain up, the voltage goes up, everything's fine. I turn around and try it on another amp, and I'm getting not getting consistent readings. And this is a question for anyone in the chat that might have a little bit more technical amp skills than I have. Because once you crack an amplifier open, it's fun to look at the amp guts, but I have no idea what I'm looking at. So I'm not an amp repair technician. Never said that I was. And so my question here is, why is it that we're getting a stable reading with one amp and not on the other?
So real quick, Stuart said, "Hey, I'm new to this channel and I'm starting to think there's a lot of inside jokes. We're sorry if you feel that way. Just so you know, me and Justin do not think very highly of either Boss or Dual. They're usually relatively inexpensive, and the last thing we would ever think about is sound quality. So we're joking about them, and that's why someone joked that. But yeah, don't. You're right. We probably should have clarified that. All right, Justin. So I don't know. That's a good question. I honestly don't know the answer to that. Maybe you know.
It's one of those things where, Memphis is a perfectly fine brand. You can get them from Crutchfield. I would call them a mainstream brand. They're not a low rent brand. They're not a brand people talk trash about. I guess some people talk trash about every brand. I don't know why it wouldn't work unless there's something wrong with the amp. If you really are doing the exact same thing, going through the exact same steps, is something wrong with the amp? How does the amp sound when you play music on it? So it could be user error. Always assume it's user error. Even everyone makes errors. I hooked up an amp backwards the other day and was thinking, how did I mess this up? Right. So always think about that. It could be user error, but if not that, it could be something wrong with the amp.
Yeah, and it could also be a problem with your measurement equipment as well, especially if you're using really cheap measurement equipment.
Right.
And that happens more often than not. And this happens a lot when people are saying, "Hey, I don't know what's going on with my frequency response rating. I'm not getting the right measurement and stuff." And usually it's because they just don't have their measurement equipment hooked up properly. And this is the thing: taking a measurement is really easy. Taking a good and accurate measurement is not as easy. It can be much harder. So keep that in mind.
All right. Yeah. That's the best answer I can give.
Yeah. All right. So this was a question that was asked me on the forum. And I think this is a really interesting question.
Yeah.
So we all know that there's a difference between audio and video quality, right? Like an MP3 doesn't have as good a quality as a CD. We know that to be true.
Hang on real quick. Adrian Bauer has some feedback on that. He said that when he sets the gain on full bridge amplifiers, he often sees voltage fluctuations or Brazilian style amplifiers. Just wanted to throw that out there. And all right. Okay.
So one of the ways that so streaming video has really changed, and streaming video has actually made it significantly worse quality. So people are buying like all these expensive TVs, like these OLED TVs, which are beautiful TVs, but then they're streaming and they're losing significant quality while streaming. So like the streaming 4K is not the same as playing a 4K disc, and it's significantly different. If you put them side by side, you would see a big difference in video and audio quality. And so the question that he brought up was, hey, look, a Kaleidoscape server is the only way to stream with good quality, which is true. But Kaleidoscape is extremely expensive. But they maintain your video quality and they maintain your audio quality, which is fantastic. Very expensive. So they said, okay. One, there were two questions in there. One, are we trading basically convenience for quality? And the answer is yes to that. And then the second question is, what can I do if I still want this video and audio quality? What's the option to be able to do? And there's only one option that I know of, but just I don't know if you know of anything before I go into mine.
No, man, with the video stuff, I'm completely ignorant. So I'll let you rock and roll on the video questions.
Yeah, he actually said offering the at par quality at a premium price and then claiming it to be superior quality simply because others are selling low quality quality has to be a scam. And it is, saying it's 4K. It's not. I mean, it is 4K, but it's very compressed. So here's what I would recommend doing. Set up a Plex server. It's not going to be necessarily cheap. You have to buy some hard drives. You have to have a computer. I did a video on this recently, but basically what you could do is any of the videos that you already own. So for example, I'm putting all my 3D movies on my hard drive right now. So like right here, I have Sing and Blu-ray. I put all my 4K movies on it. You put them all on the drive. Hey, I have kids and they love that movie. And we put it on the hard drive, and then you can get yourself an NVIDIA Shield, and an NVIDIA Shield will play 100% of the video and audio just like you were playing it off the disc. The downside is you have to buy the physical copy. The upside is the physical copies are getting cheaper because a lot of people are ditching physical copies. So,
and once you buy the physical copy, you have the physical copy. If you buy movies from Amazon, you're just renting them until Amazon's tired of letting you use it.
Yes. And the thing is, once you put this on your hard drive, you can stream it from anywhere in the world. Okay. Now I did a whole video on this on Plex. You can check it out on my channel, Toyd's DIY Audio. And it shows you how to set this up. But you can then stream this movie anywhere in the world. You can stream it on your phone. You can actually let a friend borrow it and they can stream it. Anything you want, you can do with that. So if you want to stream it in your living room, your bedroom, wherever, you can stream it.
I've got a question for you. What kind of hard drive capacity do you need to do that at scale?
So I have a lot of movies. I mean, I have over 1,000 probably, and I have 4K, a lot of 4K, and I have a lot of Blu-ray. I don't really have any DVD. So mainly all Blu-rays. So 3D Blu-rays are about 50 gigabytes each.
Okay.
Regular are about 24, 25 gigabytes.
Okay.
Each. You know, not a ton. 4K can be as much as 80 gigabytes each.
Okay.
So mine right now, I think, is up to 20 or 30 terabytes.
Okay.
Which is a lot.
And how in the world, because I've got an old school 20 terabyte drive sitting here on my desk that I bought to hold old videos. It's already halfway full of just content I made on YouTube. Sure. But it's slow. It plugged into the USB on my computer. It's slower than dirt. My editing software completely throws a fit if I leave the file on here. So I've got to move it to my solid state drive. So what in the world do you do if you're going to, because you've got to stream these things fast. You've got to have a fast hard drive. What kind of hard drive are you running?
The hard drive really doesn't have to be that fast. I'm running just a normal 7,200 RPM hard drive, and it's built for NAS. So I run a RAID 5 setup. Now the reason why
so you're
I run a
running
RAID 5, I run it. But RAID 5 is for more safety and security than anything else. What it does is, say I have 4 20 terabyte hard drives in there. You would think I'd have 80 gigabytes. I don't have 60. So 3 of them run the data, and then the last one is for the backup, right? So if any one goes wrong, you can take that one out, swap it, pop it back in. Yeah, I don't want to have to run and put these back on the hard drive again and again and again, right? If something happens to it. So I run a RAID 5 on mine.
I wonder if a video on how to set up a RAID would be something people would watch. Set up a RAID for your own streaming service.
Yeah. So, but either way, the only thing that I have issues with sometimes, or what you could have issues with, is depending on your internet speed, your intranet, because you're streaming it locally. If you're streaming it locally, it's intranet, not really internet. Is making sure that I run everything hardwired, so I don't really have to worry about that. It's a good question by Stuart. Do you do Blu-ray for the quality? Because I can't tell the difference anymore when I stream HD, but who knows? So yes, actually, so there's a couple things. What you're losing on the quality. You are losing video quality, and if you do pause it side by side, you'll notice it. And a lot of it will be in the depth of the scenes, like the shadow details, the content, and stuff of that nature. You'll be getting a lot less when you're streaming it. The other thing is audio. So you'll hear things like, you're running Dolby Atmos now on Netflix. Well, it's a version of Dolby Atmos. It's not uncompressed Dolby Atmos, which is what you get on Blu-rays and everything else. So think of it like this. An MP3 is compressed audio, right? And like a CD was uncompressed. Or you can go with Amazon Music has a lot of uncompressed audio. That's the difference, night and day. So you would get the same difference in video and audio quality. And so some streaming is getting better on video quality. I'm not going to doubt that. But you're always going to be sacrificing video and audio quality when you stream. But the main thing you're going to be sacrificing, if you're okay with the video that you are getting, is audio quality. You're not going to get lossless audio, and that's huge. The only one that offers lossless audio is Kaleidoscape, and Kaleidoscape makes you pay for their own hard drives. And I think their hard drives, last I checked, for something like I would need, was like $20,000. And that's not even including the player. It's kind of crazy.
Right.
Oh, Nate was the guy on the forum that was talking about it. So here goes Nate. Nate built an amazing home theater. Check it out on the forum. It's pretty awesome.
All right. Looking at the questions, here's one for you.
Oh, and here's what AJC said. 4K Blu-ray can push 80 megabytes a second. So you might need 1 gigabyte a second rather than 100 megabytes.
Gotcha.
But typically with your internet, you're not getting anywhere near them.
Is a horn a T-line? It's a transmission line with a bigger mouth. Like a horn-loaded speaker.
I mean, a horn is a horn. I mean, a transmission line is a type of horn, basically.
So the most basic type of transmission line is what's known as a quarter wave transmission line. And the basic idea, it's actually pretty easy to build. All you need is a transmission line that is as long as 1/4 of a wavelength of your speaker's free air resonance. So if you have a 40 hertz free air resonance, a subwoofer with a 40 hertz free air resonance, just Google how long a 40 hertz wave is, and you need a transmission line that is 1/4 of that length, which can be pretty long for subwoofers, right? Because the wavelengths get pretty long for low frequencies. And then you just want to make sure that the opening of the transmission line is as big as the cone of your woofer. And that's your basic transmission line quarter wave concept. Really not that hard to build, a little bit hard to design because sometimes you've got to fold the transmission line and stuff. I know nothing about horns, but I get the sense that there is some overlap because the software that I recommend using for modeling either horns or transmission lines. Do you know the software, Nick? The software we use?
Horn RSP. Yep, horn RSP.
Horn response. Yeah, horn resp.
Is it RESP or RSP? Either
I've
way,
always pronounced it
horn
resp. I've downloaded it. I've looked at it and tried to use it. It's a little bit more complicated, and I'm a little unfamiliar with it. Somewhere there's a difference between the two, and I'm not clear on what it is. But in general, horns and transmission lines are different things. My understanding is that horns are going to have a lot shorter ports, for lack of a better word.
So here's what I would tell you to do. Download Horn RESP and take a look at it, and you can learn it. It is not the most... What's the way I want to put it?
It's not user-friendly.
Yeah, it's not user-friendly. Yeah, it's not intuitive. Exactly. Now, I'm not saying that you can't use it. You can. I've never even spent time with it. I downloaded it at one time and then never even looked at it afterwards. So I've never used it. Can't tell you how to use it because I haven't. I'm sure I could figure it out if I wanted to. And maybe one of these days I will. But here's the deal. I just have never really been into horns, except for subwoofers. I have considered doing some horn-loaded subwoofers, but that's about it. Here's the deal. I would download that and mess around with it, and you can start to see all the different types of horns that you can do. It's pretty neat too, because you can get you can do some pretty unique layouts if you want to inside that program to decide how you want the layout. And you've seen really unique layouts on different speakers. Klipsch had a horn layout where you don't even see the woofer. All you see is the openings in the front. And I think it was the Klipsch Heritage, maybe. They have so many different speakers that they have names for. But yeah, take that out, open up that program, and go to town with it. You'll be surprised what you can do with that particular program. It's a very powerful program. Just we don't typically use it. You don't use it, right?
I've never used it. I've downloaded it and stared at it and thought to myself, what the hell is this? Because again, it wasn't intuitive or user-friendly to me. But I'm so used to using WinISD. And so switching to a new thing is kind of hard sometimes. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. This is a fun question from Jeremy Stone. It's not at all off subject, Jeremy, But complete the statement. The deepest, cleanest bass I have ever heard came from insert brand name and size of woofer.
So there's two.
Okay.
That I would say. One was the CSS 12 that I said earlier. The problem with the CSS 12 is it's a 12-inch subwoofer, right? So, you can get very deep, clean bass out of it, very clean, deep, but it's still a 12-inch subwoofer. So, you still have, you want like 6 of those in a theater or more. So after that, I would say the 21-inch subwoofers that I built, they're by SB Audience, not Acoustics. SB Acoustics is the home audio version, and SP Audience is the professional audio, like the PA audio. They had some 21-inch subwoofers. They're actually a step down from their upper end. It's just like their basic 21-inch subwoofers. They're Rosso brand. And those things, I mean, I can play single digits in my room and absolutely clean, like no issues, sealed, absolutely clean, no problems. It's very similar to the other subwoofer that I talked about earlier, where, you play it as loud as you can. And then, all of a sudden that you're playing it too loud because you're starting to hear things that you shouldn't be hearing. And Nate actually built on the forum. He actually showed us, he built 2 of the 21-inch drivers, the Krakens. And I've heard that from other people. I've never heard a Kraken. So I don't know. I know that when I was at Parts Express speaker design competition, someone bought a Kraken for $20. I was not that someone. Otherwise you would have seen it on the channel. But yeah, I think it's the one that they used for testing purposes. I was like, for testing, I would have bought that for $20. Come on.
All that means is it's broken in good, right?
I know they should have just sent it to one of us for to build something. No, actually, it's good for whoever got it. It's great. But yeah. So what about you, Justin?
So I've got several answers. There's ones I've built, and there's ones I've heard, and one that stands out in my mind. Way back in the day when I was a teenager, I was cruising around, hanging out in a parking lot one evening, as people do when they're teenagers, and people were showing off their systems. And there was a guy that had a massive kicker subwoofer in the hatch of like a hatchback Honda Accord, back when Honda Accords were hatchbacks. Who's old enough to remember when the Honda Accord was a hatchback? And it was massive. I think it was an 18. It was a Kicker gold letter. And it's cool because this is the 50th anniversary of Kicker this year. They brought back the gold letter. And this thing was just massive. And I look back and I think about it. I don't remember the sound, but I remember the look, the visual of that massive, massive subwoofer moving. And that's always left an impression on me. And so in my mind, that was the best sounding subwoofer ever. But then again, that was a long time ago. More recently, of the stuff that I've built, when I think about deep and clean, I had a 10-inch Ultimax, which is a really clean subwoofer, and I paired it with a 12-inch passive radiator and tuned it to 25 hertz, and that thing played really low, and that was a lot of fun to play those low notes. The build I have right now, where I've got the 2 10-inch RSS HOs, that one's really clean and plays low really well. But not long ago, a couple of weeks ago, someone local to me showed off their system. And where's Robert Van Hoy at? He's going to get excited when I say this. He had a pair of stereo integrity 15s in the rear of his extended cab pickup truck. They were 15s. He had them on a Teramps 8K, so the sound quality wasn't all that great because the amp was a little noisy, and it had this massive, massive aero port, and he said he had it tuned to 30 hertz, and the wind coming off that thing was just phenomenal, and that was a fantastic experience. And it other than the amp being a little bit on the dirty side, the sound blew me away. It was fantastic. He did 146 in the kick panel. He borrowed my meter, and it was, I mean, at low frequencies too. That thing was really tuned low.
Supposedly, the best that you can get, if you really, really want low frequencies, is doing a rotary sub. I've never built one.
Me either. It sounds like a fun party trick, but I can't imagine that it's going to really sound as good as a traditional subwoofer.
I think just like anything, I think the rotary sub, and I might be wrong because I've never built one, but is very limited in output frequency range.
Yeah.
So, but it's designed for, single digits, which is cool. I think they're less important nowadays. It seems like now that we're getting bigger 21, 24 inch subwoofers that can fill your room with low digit bass without needing to really worry about it. Tech Time with Eric said that he's going to be planning a trip to visit Parts Express. I think that'd be cool, man. I think it's really cool. Now, one thing I will warn you is Parts Express is a lot smaller. At least the part where you actually go in to buy stuff is a lot small.
It's a big warehouse mostly.
Yeah, 10,000 decibels at 10 hertz. Take it or leave it. Okay, 2,000 decibels. Thanks again, Adrian Bauer, for the super chat and for making us laugh.
We need to get some of those graphics and stuff to put up on the screen, like like Living Loud with Andy does. The pennies when someone, thank you for the $2 super chat. We appreciate that a whole lot.
That's a cool idea. I wonder how you do that. Oh, all right. So this was another question. Now we've answered this before, but I think my answers actually changed a little. Yesterday, I put out a video on a 3D printer, a Creality 3D printer. By the way, you should check out the video. It's really,
and what's the question? Amazing. Is it one from the chat or is it one from?
No, it's one that someone messaged me personally, and they asked if they have a small workshop, like the limited space, would we recommend go with a very small CNC, a laser, or a 3D printer? This is someone that's very limited in space, so they don't.
That's the tricky part, is the space limitations,
right?
Because if space is no issue, the CNC is the best option. And you said this before, that your preference is CNC first.
Yeah, but it's different for this particular situation,
right? Because it's a smaller space. I'm guessing you're going to say 3D printer, and after that, laser.
Actually, I was just going to go with one and choose one. But what do you think? First of all, what is your thoughts?
So I'm not really. I don't enjoy these, program it and let it cut devices. I've got a laser. It's a perfectly fine laser. It gets the job done. I had 2 companies send me lasers, and one of them was a dud. I couldn't get it working. So it's just like, here's this expensive thing sitting there staring back at me broken. And so I'm kind of mad at it. And so I've got a bad taste in my mouth for lasers. And I have a suspicion I'll have the same problem with 3D printers. I don't think I would pick either unless I just had a gun to my head and someone said, you've got to have one of these. Because I can see me buying a CNC machine, because detail work on a subwoofer box and trying to make it look pretty, do the whole cardio fabrication thing, too many routers and templates, buy a CNC machine. That's kind of where I'm at with that. But in a small space,
keep away from that dust.
Right. If you need to cut, use the laser, but you can't cut anything big. You're stuck at cutting 1/4 inch and thinner material. So I don't know. 3D.
All right. I'm going to go 3D printer as well. And here's the reason why. The problems with 3D printers were always this, right? There were 2 problems with 3D printers: speed at which it prints, and ease of use. Right. Those are the 2 big ones. Also, there's also printing multiple filaments. I recently just got this Creality K1 in, and that's what I did the video on. This thing right now is $200 off. Check my channel out. There's a link to it. It's right now, it's $400. It comes with an enclosure already built in, regulates the temperature, so you can print any type of material you want just fine. So you don't have to build an enclosure, which is what most people are having to do. And if you want to print fast, you have to worry about the speed at which it prints. This one does a resonance test on the machine, so it can print 5 times faster than the ones that I have before and better quality while printing faster. So for me, I'd say 3D printer. One, for a couple of reasons. One, you can go ahead and buy this for $400, which is cheaper than a CNC. And if
cheaper than a laser.
Cheaper than a laser. And if you want to make templates, you can make router templates on it. You don't have to. Go ahead.
Right. You can buy a cheap laser for $400, but it's going to be a cheap laser. You're telling me this is a good 10-watt printer for $400.
No, this is a great 3D printer for
Okay.
Like this is great. This is the best I've ever used. And I've spent more money than that on a 3D printer, but this is by far the best one I've used.
My experience with lasers is you're $2,000 before they start to be worth buying.
Right. And if you want the bigger one, they do have the K1 Max, which is also on sale right now. But I would do that. Check my link in the description. Check the video out and see if you like it first. But yeah, I would do that because it's you can print your own speakers out. First of all, you can design them. It's easy. Anything you design in SketchUp can go in
print
there.
your own enclosures, you mean?
You can print your own enclosures. You can print your own enclosures, and you can print router templates. So if you want to just, route out a specific thing like a waveguide or something, and you want to make your own waveguide template, you can print one off, and you'll probably be done in an hour. Where before it would take you 6 hours, and then you'd have to double check and make sure everything fits right. So for me, now that they've come down to actually being like the speed being really, really fast and the quality still being really, really great, I'd say go with something like the Creality K1, not just any 3D printer, by the way, something that goes fast. So I would do that. And then I would probably stay away from this CNC period, because like a small CNC is really rough because you can't really do much. You're limited with pretty much everything you can do.
Me personally, I feel like when I'm ready to go for the CNC machine, if I can't get a half sheet of plywood on it, I don't want it.
Right. I agree.
I mean, just because it's going to be this big thing that takes up a ton of space, a 4 foot by 3 foot, great. What's one more foot going to matter in the side of the garage? You make it just a hair bigger.
And you waste so much material.
Right.
Like a lot of people don't think, because just to fit it on the side, you got to cut like 12 inches off, and then you got to hope that you have something for that 12 inches. It's
so DIY Hi-Fi. A young guy recently went viral with a rotary sub build and went crazy and moved every door in his house around 5 hertz. That sounds like fun. If you haven't checked out DIY Hi-Fi's channel, make sure that you do so. He's got a small thriving channel where he's mostly building kits, which is actually a really fun thing to do. I like building kits. He
actually just built the Audience 212s that were on my channel. He gave you his thoughts on them. Fantastic build. It went crazy. I mean, last I checked, it had like 6,000 views already, and it was like a couple days in. I mean, it was crazy. So definitely check that out. It was really cool. And he finished them beautifully with veneer and everything. And he's going to be on with us December 4th. So if you guys have questions and you guys want to talk to him, December 4th is the day, man.
All right, here's a question. Eric's Automotive Diagnostics and Repair, trying to get some bass in a convertible Mustang. Yeah, you are going to have a very difficult time, because that's just like you say, you're limited. You don't have a big trunk. You've got to overcome the road noise of the convertible. Even with the top up, a convertible is louder than a normal car. You've already got the 4-gauge wire. What's a good combo of amp and sub to recommend? Hits around 30, 35 hertz. If you've got it tuned to 35, 36 hertz, you're going to have no trouble hitting those frequencies. Now, tuning it to 30 or 35 hertz is going to be a really long port, and you're going to have a hard time fitting that in the trunk space. I'm going to recommend passive radiators. Nick, did you freeze, or are you just like stopping to think?
I was thinking this would be the perfect time where I don't know that I would recommend necessarily a sub, maybe unless it's like an under the seat sub, if you can fit something under the seat or something, because the problem is that car sits so low. I don't know that you can fit anything under this. Might even be a bass shaker time.
Yeah, that might work. But this is a problem that convertible Mustang owners have been dealing with since the beginning of convertible Mustangs.
So I don't know about the convertible Mustang, but a lot of cars, what people will do, and you're still going to have an issue because you're not as sealed as other places. And like you said, you have less space. The only place I could possibly think of, assuming this has it, is take out your spare tire and, put a nice subwoofer in there and put a big one in there. That type of thing, you could do something like that. But I think you're right. I think you're going to have a really hard time hitting 30 to 35 hertz, unless he did something like what we talked about earlier, or we talked about last week, which is put something in the kick panels, 6.5, 7 inch epic, something like that, where you could maybe get, where it has enough excursion that we can DSP the heck out of it.
Right. If you look back in the 90s when Ford was selling the Mach 460 system stock, it was 460 watts peak power, not RMS. This was a system that had 3-inch, mid-range / tweeters that were mounted up high, and in the doors there were some woofers that were actually ported. I think they may have been. And so that's what you're talking about. You're talking about going with a larger mid-range or maybe even an actual subwoofer up front in the doors. That's something to think about. That can get pretty complicated. You might find yourself building out door pods or something, or maybe custom speaker pods might have something on their website for a Mustang. But if you're just thinking about put a subwoofer in the trunk, do the best I can with that scenario. A single 10 or a 12, as far as the brand name goes, the brands we mentioned before, the Kicker is a good one, of course, and we're fans of Dayton Audio because they bring a pretty good value. But I would look into a passive radiator setup. 4-gauge power wired, you're good for close to 1,000 watts on 4-gauge copper, not CCA but OFC. So that, you've got plenty of power wire for plenty of power. The question is, how much extra juice does the alternator have?
For some reason, like when you said Kicker, I was thinking Kicker. I barely know her.
That's a really bad joke, Nick.
I know it is. I don't know why, but I think the best thing is to get the bass as close to you as possible, close, because that's how you're going to feel it. But if you really just want to feel it, because you talked about like wanting to feel it, I would first go with some good old bass shakers.
Right,
man. If that all you care about is the feeling, that's going to be the first thing that I would go with. And then you can attach those right to the bottom of the seat and you'll feel it.
It's a different and fun approach to go with. You pair that with some decent subwoofers in the trunk and it might actually have a cool effect.
Yeah. Or it doesn't even have to be subwoofers. Someone was mentioning this the other day. It was on Facebook. Not this particular question. Had said, why do I have this great sound system on low where I get all this full bass and then I turn it up and the bass disappears? And of course, he's using an already built system with DSP amplifier built in. And they do that. Like they trick you, right? The way that they do that is they have the bass boosted when it's lower, but when it's up higher, it knows the speakers can't handle it. So guess what? The bass gets limited. And so everything else gets higher, but the bass is down here. And they do that on purpose to protect the drivers. But it does make it sound really, really, bassy at lower volumes. And then higher volumes, you lose it all. And so that could be an effect if all you're trying to do is feel it. If all you're trying to do is feel it, like you already have enough like mid bass and things of that nature going on, then that might be an issue, or that might be.
So this is the question for you. You've probably seen home theater receivers with this, and some of the guys in the chat might remember back in the day, an aftermarket car audio receiver, the head unit would have a button on it called loudness that actually did that on purpose. Where at low volume, you would push that button and it would boost the bass. So now what's happened is car manufacturers automatically do that. That's what your audio control LC line output converters are designed to do. They're Acubase technology. So you can buy one of those if you need to. But here's a question that's right up your alley, Nick. Someone's asking about Isobaric setups.
Never heard of it.
I didn't think you had. But again, that's an inside joke. Nick had one of his biggest, probably one of his biggest videos to date was where he took 4 10-inch subwoofers and built this awesome chip system with cheap subwoofers, and it was Isobaric. So
I think they were the 12s actually. I
thought they were 10s.
I don't know.
I don't remember. It's your video. You should remember it before I do.
It's called the ISO 100 for anyone that wants to look it up. But he says I got cheap 12s looking for an Isobaric box to add to my setup in building. How would I calculate the airspace? 1.2 sealed, 1.7 ported on spec. What would it be for Isobaric? First of all, Isobaric makes a lot of sense when you go with cheaper subwoofers, but mainly because cheaper subwoofers require a bigger box. In this particular case, the box is actually relatively small.
Right.
So I don't even know that you want to go Isobaric in this particular case, but Isobaric would be half. So if you did one set of Isobaric subwoofers, right? So if you had two 12-inch subwoofers, instead of going a 1.2 sealed, you'd do a 0.6 sealed. Now, the reason why it made sense for the ISO 100, this 12-inch subwoofer was $20, and you can still buy it for $20. I think it might be 25 now. It's in that range. And that particular subwoofer needed like a 4 cubic foot box to hit 20 hertz. And I was like, well, I don't want a 4 cubic foot box for one 12-inch subwoofer. So then I realized I could do 2 pairs of Isobaric, so 4 total subwoofers, which was under $100, right? That's what ISO 100 stood for, is Isobaric for $100. And that thing, when I played it, it was shaking the walls in the entire room. And I did the math in WinISD, and it basically had very similar output to one 18-inch Ultimax, but the difference in price was $100 versus this ridiculous price for the Ultimax. I can't even remember what the Ultimax sells for now, but over 200. And the Ultimax required significantly more power, where the Isobaric 100 only required 250 watts. So you could buy a 250 watt plate amplifier, or if you already had one, you could use one. And so for me, that's what made a lot of sense, going with the Isobaric in that particular case. I don't know in this particular case, an Isobaric would make a lot of sense, but it halves the volume.
Yes, the rule of thumb with Isobaric is you can get away with half of the enclosure volume. The danger with doing that ported, again, this is always a problem with a ported enclosure. When the enclosure gets smaller, the port has to get longer, and you eventually reach this point of absurdity where your enclosure is more port than it is box. And so what do you even have then? It's like a really poorly designed transmission line. The other thing to remember is that back in the day, when the 90s, when people were building these for car audio, it was because our drivers were really weak compared to today. So when you do Isobaric, you double the motor force and keep the same cone area, which is, I guess, why you can cut the box size in half. The other thing to remember is they are less efficient. So your efficiency drops by 3 dB. It's like having less cone area for some reason. So you have a less efficient enclosure, but you have more power handling, and you can put it in a smaller box. So there's a ton of trade-offs with it. The best thing to do is to just download WinISD and plug it into WinISD and see what kind of results you get in WinISD.
Well, my guess
short
is
answer is
if they're cheap 12-inch, if they're cheap 12s, he probably doesn't have any information on them as far as
fair enough.
Fair enough.
Yeah. So at that point, you're just kind of shooting in the dark, but that's okay. Sometimes if they're cheap subs, why not? What do you have to lose?
Well, I mean, it's worth testing. I mean, I'm always a big fan of just trying out things. Who cares? Test it out, try it out, see if you like it, see if you don't like it, whatever. It's definitely an experiment to work with, but I'm just telling you, typically the reason why you did that is because before you needed these really large boxes.
Right.
Oh yeah. So that video by DIY Hi-Fi now has over 13,000 views. And I was going to say, he also hit over 1,000 subscribers. So congratulations, DIY Hi-Fi, for the 1,000 subscriber mark, man. That is awesome.
My last video got like 1,300 views. So if he's doing 13,000, fantastic.
You just got to build more of my speakers, man.
There you go. I guess that's what I need to do, right?
Building endgame speakers, audience 212. That's what he called it. It has over 13,000 views on that alone. And it just came out 6 days ago. So good for him. I mean, that's under a week old, and that thing just took off, which is awesome.
Nick, here's a question we've been asked before, and I feel like I've given my answer before. You have any experience with JL audio speakers, car speakers?
Well, no. Amplifiers, yes, but not their speakers.
So my opinion of JL Audio is that JL Audio makes really good stuff, but they're very, very proud of their stuff. I feel like when looking at JL Audio, there's other stuff that's better at the same price, and there's other stuff that is just as good but cheaper. And so I'm not a fan of JL Audio because of that. Go ahead.
I was going to say, I know our friend Drew Jones really likes them.
Oh, yeah, I'm sure he does. And that's fine. But my experience is that it's just kind of like, oh, wow, you get that much for your money. And the other problem I have with JL is I have been known to, in my younger days, walk into a car stereo shop with a wad of cash in my hand, wanting to buy some other brand besides JL. And the salesman at the store only want to show me JL. All right, the conversation would go, I'm looking for a pair of these subwoofers right here. Can I listen to them over on your wall? Because I kind of hear what they sound like. And he says, oh, you should hear the JL instead. It's like, well, I have a budget I have to stick under and I can't afford 2 of the JL10s, but I can afford this other brand that you carry. Oh, let me show you the JL8. And when you run into a situation like that, it's usually because the sales staff are either getting a huge commission, or their bosses are telling them push JL and they're going to throw a fit if you don't sell them JL. And so this is a guy who would rather lose a sale, just lose a sale entirely than to sell someone something besides JL. And that just kind of sets me wrong. And I've walked into 2 or 3 stereo shops just randomly in my life where that was the attitude. Oh, you're not here to buy JL, then why are you here? It's like, well, you carry other brands too that I'm interested in. And after you've had that experience 2 or 3 times from 2 or 3 different shops, you start to go, something up about this is fishy. And that's my opinion of JL Audio.
Yeah.
And they probably will never sponsor me ever now. And I'm perfectly fine with that because something's fishy.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't know anything about it. It sounds like they probably have quotas and sales bonuses.
Yeah.
Which,
and Garmin did buy JL Audio, and that's no big deal. Someone mentioned Harman. Harman owns a bunch of other brands. Harman owns Infinity. Harman owns JBL and several other pro audio brands. They have a pretty wide portfolio of brands. And what you might not know is that Rockford Fosgate is actually owned by same company that owns Wet Sounds, and they're basically in the RV business. So, wow. I mean, Rockford Fosgate a couple of years ago was bought out by some other, conglomerate that sells automotive stuff. So
there could be some really like 80s advertising with that name, Wet Sounds.
Yeah, they make boat speakers.
Yeah, but you know what I'm saying, right? Like,
no.
80s advertising was very sexualized, right? So,
okay. Well,
with the name like Wet Sounds, you could come up with some. Well, supposedly in the past couple of years it's changed. All right, this should be our last question, but let's definitely answer for Nate for sure. Okay, question: how does mixing different size subwoofer drivers from different brands affect bass? I have 2 21-inch drivers from Dayton, and I'm thinking about adding 2 more 24-inch drivers from Stereo Integrity. Holy crap, Nate! I've seen your setup. You don't need 2 more 24-inch drivers. This guy has 3 Audience 212s in the front. He's got 4 Cinema 10s in the back and 5 Atmos speakers. And now he wants to add 2 24-inch by Stereo Integrity. It's insane. And he's got a JVC projector. It's just unbelievable. I'm gonna go out there sometime. I don't know when. It's got to be next year because it's not gonna be this year. I know that, but I'm gonna go out there and tour his theater and hopefully do a video on that. All right. So what's your thought on this, by the way?
So we've talked about this before on the show and on our individual channels, and we had someone who spoke to us in one of our very first Q&A shows and asked this question. We brought it up when Drew Jones was on the show, and we concluded that mixing drivers is probably not the best idea, especially when you're mixing different ohm loads on amplifiers and mixing ported and sealed. The problem is you're going to run into problems with potential phasing issues. So keeping everything in phase can be very difficult. There are cases where it does work. Rawcat was on our channel, and he has a 10-inch subwoofer up front in a custom built center console plus his subwoofer in the back, but he's got that thing DSP'd like mad. So the problem is that you run into a lot of problems. And we actually told someone on the show one time, hey, go home and test it out. And I took some screenshots of it. He commented on a video. He tried it out, and he went home and he mixed 2 or 3 different types of subwoofers together. And no matter what he tried, he couldn't get it to sound right. So right. You have the problem of buying 2 big 24-inch drivers and running the risk of getting them home, and you can't get things to phase correctly.
So here's what I would say. I would say, first of all, I have no problem with this necessarily, depending on how you set it up. I'm going to assume, having seen Nate's setup, that all of them are going to be up front, right next to each other, which is going to help a little. Because we have really long wavelengths, right, that we're working with. So that's going to help a little bit. The other thing that I would say is I would recommend, if you're going to do something like this, get bass management by Dirac Live, because that's going to help fix your issues that you're going to have. And that's going to be the best thing to do. I don't have any issue with the doing 24-inch, but I would probably just buy 2 more 21 inches for Dayton and have a day. There's not going to be a huge difference probably between the 21s and 24s. I'm going to assume that if you're doing the 24s, you're probably going to go sealed. And so then you're going to have 2 sealed and 2 ported, which would, add into some issues that we're talking about. So
now,
for me, I'd probably just do 2.
I'd be more inclined to try this in a home setup like you've got with like this guy, like Nate has with his very big home theater system. But if you're in a car, please don't mix drivers together, because most of the time with the car setup, when you're mixing drivers, it's because you're trying to cobble together a system. You had a subwoofer, someone gave you one to go with it, that kind of thing. And so you're like, why not hook them both up and see what happens? Because it's going to suck. That's why. And in this case, with someone who has some experience putting it together, give it a try. But again, DSP it. Spend the money on the DSP.
Spend the money on the DSP. And if it was me, if I'm going 24s and I'm going to go seal, I'd probably just seal the 21s as well. And then I think you'd have no issues. I'm not going to say no, but you know what I mean? I think the potential for those issues that you were going to have diminished greatly.
I mean, with that
by the way,
area, I mean,
while we're talking about this,
wow.
Eric's automotive diagnostic repair. I looked up his channel. It looks pretty cool. So if you guys want to check out his channel, I also checked out Tech Time with Eric, who is also commenting, and it also looks like a cool one. So if you guys want to check out their channels, check them out, because why not? Yeah, you have the cone area. So
yeah, I mean, that's a lot of cone area.
Absolutely.
Well, Nick, I have a question for you. What's coming up next on your channel?
Oh man, so I have a very, very, very busy week this week. So this Thursday, we're actually doing a Friendsgiving. I don't know if you've ever done none of those, but basically we're having friends over, and yeah, we're just going to celebrate having good friends, and I think that's a good thing to have. Whenever you have good friends around, you should always do that. So I got that going on, which would normally cut into my videos, but I have promised to get some videos out by certain dates as much as I possibly can. And so I've got 2 projector videos coming out, both budget projectors. One is the cheapest 4K projector that I know of. It's $500 and it's a 4K projector. As far as I know, that's the cheapest one on the market. And then the other one is one that people have asked me to review, which is by Yaeber. It's a K2S. So that'll be a very interesting one. Both these are budget projectors. And then I want to get at least one other video out this week, which would be the Sofa Baton U2 remote control, which is kind of cool. Now, the following week, a lot of people from your channel are going to be interested in, because I'm going to test 3 different head units out. So that'll go out on the channel. So you'll get to check those out. There'll be 3 separate videos probably, but I'll be able to comment on which one I like. But actually, it'll be 2 separate videos, because one of them I'm going to do together. It'll be a dual video. So that'll be really interesting.
Awesome. I have a stack of amplifiers that I need to amp dyno, and I'm probably going to be working on some amp dynos. I mentioned in previous weeks, I'm having some knee trouble, and I've got an MRI scheduled this week, and I'm afraid I've got knee surgery in my near future. So I'm going to try to cobble together videos that I can cobble together while not walking. The last video was the review of the Hi-Fi OS 10 speakers. Fantastic set of speakers. Check out the video. I think they're decent speakers, and you'll be interested to see my recommendation at the end of the video. I also just experimenting with the video to show how placing speakers near a wall will impact the sound. So check out that video.
Oh yeah, that was a good video.
I do have some footage I've been working on as I've been able to, and I've got a video idea coming out. I don't want to announce it because when you announce a video before it's done, you always have something fall through. But I've been doing some testing with some of the speakers that Savard has sent me, and I've got some fun stuff in the works.
All right. That's all we got for you guys.
That is it. And we are out.
We're out. See ya.